Biology or biological, the ecologies, let's say, in economies and cultures are ever proliferating. And also there's this aspect of contingency, then basically any model is going to be inadequate. Anything you can write down in advance, a set of rules, some relationships, some diagrams, etc. Anything that you write down is going to be inevitably outmoded, right? As what you're trying to understand evolves. That's what we would expect when we say the system becomes, the world becomes ever more proliferate, let's say. Right? And there are reasons why we can argue why that is the case with biology. And we'll read something, why it is the case that biology, that ecosystems and social systems should have this kind of property of proliferation. In any case, the basic point is that models would be inadequate. We know the same, right? All models, what is it? All models are wrong. Some models are useful. Yeah? So not to deny that they're useful. I mean, it's useful practice to apply some models, expecting that they would be obsolete. Okay. Another approach would be to say, let's have data. Let's just collect more data. So let's look for correlations among data. Maybe if we have enough data, we observe correlations, then maybe then we can actually go in this kind of practical way, look for correlations. We don't know why the correlations are there, but let's just go by statistics and try to relate, for example, symptoms of illnesses with treatments, and just hope that the statistics will, cure us or save us. But there are deep mathematical theorems that actually show that this is cannot be the case. That this will lead to actually a lot of spurious correlations that have no causal basis. Okay. So data is not going to be a solution either. So so we have also on the academic side this big debate between quantitative and qualitative methods, right? So, but for now 15 years or so, I've been convinced that this kind of measurement problem, framed in terms of, it's misframed. We think about, well, we could use qualitative methods or use quantitative methods. But I think that kind of divide, first of all, is too coarse. But also, there may be other ways to articulate phenomena in addition to using numerical measures, in addition to using tabular or schema, formal structures like that, in addition to logic, like different logical dependencies, right? And topology is what I've been proposing as one of several modes of articulation from mathematics that is could be more robust and to use a term from Deleuze, anexact, ANEXACT, right? He has this notion of anexactness. Where these concepts do not immediately devolve to numerical, quantitative, nor do they devolve to bits of ordinary language. Yes, we can always gloss these notions using words, but these concepts from topology stand in their own relation to each other. And that's what we'll think about today in the latter part of our session together. Okay, and the way they relate to one another, the way that we can deploy them, give us purchase. These concepts give us purchase that we cannot get, that we do not get using these other modes of articulation, whether it's numerical or logical or narrative descriptions in, let's say, a thick written description of a social phenomenon, right, from anthropology, sociology, right, with words. Now, more precisely, about this topological and metabolic approach to ontogenesis. First of all, why ontogenesis rather than some other term like morphogenesis, right? So the basic question is, if we accept that the world is ever changing, it's dynamical. And you can say, okay, doesn't it seem to you that a lot of these techniques for describing things or situations, they're snapshots, right? They call them synchronic descriptions, like, well, in fact, a photograph, but it could also be a diagram. Like if you try to model something using a systems approach, one might say, or you might draw these different agents, let's say, or different functionally some sort of operators, let's say, that linked in some sort of graph. Typically you might draw some diagrams, right? And then you have some flow of people or quantities or whatever between time. But this diagram itself is static. Okay, so and a lot of the descriptions we make are of this form. They're static representation. It could be a schema, some logical schema. So, and yet it seems like there's a big divide between these kinds of descriptions that are synchronic versus other descriptions that would be needed to adequately describe process. So behind all this is this processualist approach to the world, coming from processual philosophy that maybe some of you have already studied. But it's a lineage as equally ancient to, let's say, a more atomistic theory. So I'm thinking of Heraclitus or Leibniz or Deleuze, or more recently people like Alfred North Whitehead and Isabel Stengers. Okay, so these are some of the people that are my references for processualist philosophies, process philosophies. Okay. And that's another motivation. Okay, so that's one, this processualist approach. Okay. Another is this a materialist approach. So trying to think in a way that, again, this Whiteheadian, this way of trying to think about situations that doesn't require us to separate, to bifurcate between the stuff that we're talking about, whether it's economic stuff like capital or social capital, if you want, or material. And concepts. Okay, and that's a very hard project. This is not a seminar on Whitehead, but if some of you are interested, that is one philosopher I would highly recommend beginning to read. Okay, and begin to think in a very careful way about how to take an unbifurcated approach to what the world is made of.